So, how many of you have bought gas before? All right, so it's important, right? It's relevant. It's like food. It's like water.
It's like Jimbo beer.
It's like Jimbo beer.
Can't live without it. 24 pack at a time.
So how many of you knew that we had a gas tax? Okay, most of you. I didn't know. So maybe that's why I thought that was a big deal. Anyway, we tax gas, and it's on the gallon. It's 18.4% cents on the gallon, and that's the federal tax. We have a state tax too, but that changes. And it makes $11.5 billion a year for the U.S. 60% of it goes to highways and bridges, and the other 40% just kind of goes to other stuff, has to do with driving around. So it hasn't grown with inflation. It's kind of weird, but you know, I guess that's just how it's implemented. But it exists. Is basically what I'm trying to say here. And the thing about it is that it kind of unfairly taxes poor people because the fact that it taxes on the gallon means that whenever someone buys a gallon of gas, they all pay the same tax. But certain people, as we know, make $100 million a year, $300,000 a year, and some people make only $10,000 a year. And so the percentage of the gas tax compared to how much they make can vary greatly. So it disfavors poor people. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to help, and it's not just poor people; it's the middle class in general. How we're going to do this is tie the gas tax to the income brackets and the income tax. It's going to be really easy, and it's going to benefit
No one.
all of you, because I'm sure none of you make an exorbitant amount of money.
I make enough to buy a Jimbo 6-pack, apparently, at $220, 24-pack.
That's not enough. So
Yeah, it's not enough.
let's help our country. Let's help the middle class. Let's make us strong, independent, off foreign oil by buying oil and making the rich people pay for it.
Yes!
Yes.
Screw them!
Screw them. All right. Here we go.
Okay. I'm sure some of you are wondering, how is this magical, lessening tax going to be implemented to people? That 50% of people are.
Oh, you consulted with Mitt Romney.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing.
Yes, mathematically impossible implementation.
So let me explain how mathematically impossible it is. And
Cool.
Put the logic there in your brains. Okay, so how many of you have driver's licenses?
All of you.
Okay, good. So we are assuming that people who are purchasing gas for their cars while driving around do indeed have driver's licenses.
Oh, this won't work in Texas.
So this might not work in Texas. But let's forget about Texas for a while. Forever, actually, if you want to. But for right now, all driver's licenses in the United States have either a barcode or a metal scanning strip on their driver's license, or both. And little do you know that barcode actually holds all the information that's on the front of your driver's license in it, but in a digital format. So that thing can be scanned and that information sent to anywhere, and it has your license, your address, your name, everything that's on your driver's license is in that strip. So now what we're thinking about implementing would actually not be all that difficult. The technology already exists, it's just a matter of putting it all together. We would be putting card readers onto every pump in every gas station in the United States. Now this card reader would make you have to scan your driver's license every time you buy gas. This is just a way to keep track of how much gas you buy within a year, because we can't really put your gas consumption onto your income tax without knowing how much you're actually consuming in a year. Card readers exist, obviously. Your license already has a card reading mechanism on it. So whenever you buy gas, just like handing them your credit card, well, I guess in Oregon, just like handing the gas assistant your credit card, or in any other place using it yourself, you would also use your driver's license. And this would just tack on how much consumption of gasoline you use within a total year. Costs of implementing this for a one-time deal, say the average commercial card reader is about $50 to $100. There's 159,000 retail gas stations in the United States, about, say, 10 pumps per station. It would cost approximately $120 million to implement this for a one-time thing, and this is less than 2% of the revenue that we would be looking at annually for implementing this new tax that
It's
we have.
11.5 billion. So it's nothing.
Okay. Yeah, sure. All right, so this would be a one-time payment, $120 million, which is nothing. Just don't even worry about it. So this is very easy to track, unlike carbon tax. This is very easy to quantify. Every time you swipe your card, your information gets sent off to a database in the IRS. The IRS has your data. It already has your data, so it really doesn't matter. And then when you get your W-2 forms, how many people have actually filled out their taxes here? All right, good for you. I have not, but I've learned a lot from this project. And so when you get your W-2 forms, you will also get from the IRS your total consumption of gasoline for the whole year. You'll look at that. You'll input that in your taxes. When your taxes are put either through your accountant or any program you may be using, you will find out with consistency for your income bracket how much money you will be paying in addition to the other taxes you already pay. Now, keep in mind, this is actually going to be taking away the current tax that exists on gas. So you will see a massive decrease in gasoline prices. And this is essentially, you'll be paying less or almost the same as the taxes that are currently in place. But because it's now tied to your income bracket, the taxes will be easier to handle for poorer people, middle income people, and richer people, because it will be a very personal tax. Now, this implementation is comparable and better for the consumer than the current gas tax that's already in place. For instance, it does have the subjectivity based on your income, as we've already discussed. It has transparency. You'll be able to see the real price of tax. I know some of you did not know that there is actually a gas tax on gasoline every time you buy it, but it does exist. And with our implementation of our tax, that will no longer be there. There will be the transparent actual price of gas for every time you buy gas, and you'll look up and you'll see the board, and it will be actually how much gas costs. So you'll know the taxes that you're paying. And it's important to know the taxes that you're paying for the amount of gas that you consume, because we consume more gasoline than the next 16 countries' consumption of gasoline combined. Just look at that. That's us. I mean, my God. That's us. And that's just for motors. That's just us with our silly little cars.
Big cars.
Silly giant cars. And, I mean, look at China and Japan. What are they doing?
They're not driving to Jimbo's beer store like the rest of us.
We need our beer and we need our cars at the same time sometimes. Over the last 6 decades, you'll see that our gas consumption has skyrocketed just insane amounts. It's only gone up. It's ridiculous. And this would really, our gas would really help with consumption awareness, which is something that's very important. Every time you scan your driver's license, the number will pop up, and that number is the number of gallons that you've consumed so far that year. You'll see that, and you'll know. And even if it's a subconscious thing, you'll realize that you probably need to change your consumption habits. It'll provide a sense of personal responsibility, which currently does not exist in our gasoline consumption habits, even though it should. And I believe this will naturally decrease the United States' dependence on motor gasoline in a very personal and subjective way.
All right, so let's talk money. How much is this going to cost me? Well, here I've outlined the current federal income tax brackets and the approximate number of people who fall into each of these brackets based off the 143 million people that filed last year. Now we have to be careful with this because it's estimated that there's 194 million licensed drivers in the United States, whereas there's only 143 million tax filers. So if we make the safe and reasonable assumption that all tax filers, plus or minus a negligible amount, are also licensed drivers, we find that around 74% of the licensed adult drivers in the U.S. also filed for taxes. As far as gasoline consumption goes, it's estimated that the U.S. uses around 134 billion gallons of gasoline per year, and around 69% of that goes towards transit. So effectively, we have around 92 billion gallons of gasoline per year for transit, which is essentially gasoline that we're purchasing at the pump. Now, if we multiply that 92 billion gallons by the 74% of the people buying it that are actually going to file for taxes, we find that we have around 68 billion gallons of gasoline per year that is taxable. So here we get into the meat of the tax. Don't get overwhelmed by this table here. Essentially, we have the income tax brackets and the percentage of people as before. It's important to note, if you are unaware of how the income tax works, those who inhabit the upper range of this table are lower income families, whereas this area of the table is higher income families. We can also then calculate, based off the 68 billion gallons of gasoline used per year, how much gas each tax bracket will use. And then the real portion of the tax is how much we're going to charge each group. And we've normalized that value to the current gas tax so that around half the population will be paying less than the current gas tax, which is 18.4 cents per gallon, whereas this half the population, the richer half of the population, will be paying slightly more than the current gas tax. So all this said, we project that we can raise around $17.5 billion per year with this tax, which, if you remember from before, the current gas tax raises around $11.5 billion. So that's a net benefit, if we were to replace this tax with the current one, of around $6 billion. Now, the important thing to recognize here is that, as I said before, almost half the population is paying less than they do now for gas and taxes. And say you are one of the few who are in the upper income brackets, you're not going to be just sledgehammered with this tax. Even if you're in the top 3% of income families, the gas tax will only be around $60 per year above current taxes.
But now, what's really important, since you're going to be paying this money, it's going to be less. But you're still going to have to pay it. So why do you want to? Well, because of all the things it can get you, essentially. Starting with city buses. With the revenue taken from 1 year of this tax, we could supply over 18,000 new diesel buses for use in cities to help people use public transportation, so that they wouldn't even necessarily have to be paying as much in taxes, because they could use this instead. And that over 18,000 new diesel buses, that's more than 28 times the number of buses used by the city of Portland. And if we decide to reduce our dependence on oil, even with our public transportation systems, we can get new hybrid buses. We can get 11,000 more of those, which is still over 17 times the number used by Portland. Or we could try investing in surface light rail. The revenue stream could be used to expand 128 miles of surface light rail in large cities. Or, if we want to try and take it in a different direction and decrease our oil use in other areas, like energy, we could build about 16 wind farms, each supplying 350 megawatts of energy, which is enough wind farms to power about 16 cities that have the energy use needs of Eugene. And it pays you guys back. Not only are you getting a lot of services, there will also be a lot of jobs created. It could add up to nearly 108,000 new jobs just every year. And this is the most important thing to remember. This is every year. This revenue that we're taking in, it can provide enough money to do any one of these projects every year. But that means that if over the long span, we can start on a whole bunch of new projects, financing everything we might need to create better, more sustainable lives, less dependent on foreign oil, and get jobs. So the main thing to take away from this, most of you out there are going to be paying less than you currently do, and you'll be getting more for the money that you're paying, which is great.
How did you guys lose the election?
Obama's just so cool.
Florida
We
took too
couldn't.
long to vote.
All right. Okay, thanks. Before you come up here, Blue Team, I have a teachable moment here on this price of gas thing that we haven't talked about.
Do something that would make us look good. Great.
but here's how they were completely wrong.
There, yeah, that's okay.
So that's the typical hierarchy of structure of the price of gas. It's become increasingly dominated by, I'm on camera now, crude oil, which didn't used to be. I'll show you what this looked like historically. But the price of gas has always been broken out into four components. Price of crude oil sets baseline price. You have to refine it. Refining costs are independent of the price of crude oil. They've been the same forever because they're the same kind of refineries. Distribution and marketing is the next part, and that's basically related to individual dealers. An individual dealer, gasoline, you go to a gas station, the owner doesn't make any money. He's never made any money in his life. It's a terrible business to be in. And then there's this tax thing that we heard about. Now that's the situation of January 2012 when the average national price was $3.38 a gallon. It's now higher than that because that's gone up. If we look at this one that compares the time period 2000-2008 with 2008 itself, 2008 is the start of our financial crisis, you can see there was a time when the tax burden on the price of gas was considerable, and that's when it's at its most regressive. Right now, the price of gas is so high because of the high price of crude oil that it's proportionally less regressive than it used to be. So, distribution and marketing remains the same. Refining costs have come way down as a percentage of price, and taxes have come way down as a percentage of price because the baseline price is going up because of the price of crude oil. So there's significant time evolution in this percentage of taxes that we pay. So just wanted to update you on that. Okay, blue team, you can take it away.